Rocky is looking pretty amazing. His skin is pretty much clear, and just even like the skin tone is just this healthier shade, and the dark circles that were under his eyes, those are getting better. He's sleeping better, he's eating better, he's pooping better. Just everything in our world with him has gotten so much better, and he's so much happier. Developmentally, he's talking more, he's standing up for longer periods of time, he's playing and just interacting. To say that this has changed our lives almost feels like an understatement, but hopefully you guys get the picture, and especially if you or someone you know has gone through eczema, then you would know firsthand just the amount of suffering that goes along with it. I definitely had no idea before Rocky's eczema just like what a big deal it is, how uncomfortable, and like the itching that just nothing relieves. And because it is a two-way street to deal with, dealing with the skin and with the gut at the same time, it just makes it so much more of a complex thing to deal with. So early on with Rocky, like within the first week that we started with Dr. Kilbaine, we had a very comprehensive blood draw that I mentioned on my last video, and Dr. Kilbaine said don't freak out, and sure enough, like the labs were really bad. So it's not really surprising though, just given like the level of histamine inside of his body, but still, I mean, as a mom, you can't help but freak out a little bit. So I felt like it would be helpful to share the conversation that I had with Dr. Sheila going over his labs, and she was kind enough to go over them again with me so that we could record them and share them in this video. So that if you or someone you know is dealing with eczema, I thought that it would just be really enlightening to show where Rocky's starting. Within this next month, we'll be getting another lab draw, so we'll be able to compare his first labs with what he looks like now. And I mean, just judging by what he looks like on the outside, I'm super optimistic that the labs are probably going to look a whole lot better, especially because Dr. Kilbaine has used those to determine what he needs more of and where he's been deficient. So that's where we've been focusing his supplementation and overall gut healing. She's sharing her desktop screen, so you'll get to see exactly what his markers are on everything. We're being very transparent, but know that that's what Rocky looked like just over 8 weeks ago, and we have another lab draw coming in the next several weeks, which I will share with you guys as well. And obviously we're praying that that one looks a lot better than this one. And then after that conversation with Sheila, I just wanted to share with you what Rocky looks like now. So at the end of this video, if you just want to see what Rocky looks like, please feel free and let us know in the comments if you or someone you know has dealt with eczema, because we understand, we've been there, and we're finally seeing the light out of this, and just want anybody that has gone through this to experience that as well. Hi, Dr. Sheila. Thank you so much for taking the time out of, I know, your crazy busy schedule to go over Rocky's labs. I think it will just be so helpful. One, I'd love to see them again just to get a greater understanding, and two, just sharing what a baby, a 14-month-old baby with high-grade eczema, what he's starting out looking like at this point, and just where he's hopefully, I mean, going from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen. And so Rocky's labs, Teddy and I have already gone through them in depth. So we're going to do an overview. And they were pretty similar to what I thought they would be, and what we will see a lot of times in kids who have a pretty significant eczema and who are on somewhat of a limited diet. So his white count looks perfect. So that's your immune system. His hemoglobin, which is kind of a measurement of our iron levels, that's 12.8, which is also perfect. The normal levels are over here. I always look at the MCV, which is mean corpuscular volume. So that is an indicator of how our bodies are absorbing B12 and folate. If we're not absorbing those things, that number will increase. And then I look at platelets. His platelets are a little bit elevated. You can see 450 is the high end of normal, and he's at 555. So platelets are something called an acute phase reactant. So that means that if there's something going on, if there's an infection, an illness happening, those platelets can elevate temporarily, and then they'll go back down. And for Rocky, we're rechecking his labs here in the next probably 2 or 3 weeks. So we will check in to make sure that those are coming down. They're not too high that we need to automatically go in and repeat labs immediately. So those are probably just from the eczema, and they should be coming down. Neutrophils are the part of the white blood cells. These are the different white blood cell lines. So there's neutrophils, which help fight bacteria, lymphocytes, which help fight viruses, and I'm simplifying this also. Monocytes, which also are part of the immune system. Eosinophils, eosinophils are quite elevated at 18, and those normally will be at 0 to 5. And those can be elevated if you have allergies or if you have a parasite. It can be also with more serious conditions such as cancer, which I do not think, Rocky. All of these other cell lines look really good. So we're monitoring him, and we'll recheck this. But again, this wasn't an alarming that I felt like we needed to automatically repeat these labs right away. And then we'll go down here, and I'll look at his iron. More specific look at what's going on with his iron. So I'll pop here to his total iron, and it's 58, which is roughly in between. I'll like us to get that up a little bit higher, but it's decent. But his iron saturation, so how much iron is on the receptor sites, is low at 14. So it's just at the low end of normal. But I prefer that to be closer, 25-ish, 30, even a little bit higher than that. So we generally don't do iron immediately with these kids, because what happens is iron can feed the not so beneficial bacteria in the gut. So we want to make sure that we're giving him iron at the right time. And we actually are pretty close to being ready to do the iron. Normally, I like to do an iron that has something called lactoferrin in it, which is dairy based, and we can't do dairy with him. So we're gonna pick something else that we'll use for him. And then these other two numbers, the total iron binding capacity and unbound iron binding capacity, those numbers, as our iron levels go down, those numbers will go up. And you could see his are starting to, they're at the higher end of normal, which is why I'm really happy that we have these labs and we're treating him, because we'll get those numbers corrected. And it's really, iron is so important for our bodies, for so many of our metabolic processes. So we want to make sure that he's got adequate amounts of iron, and even as importantly, we want to make sure that his body is utilizing it well, and that his gut is able to efficiently and effectively absorb the iron from his food. And that's where most of your listeners have heard about a leaky gut. And that's one of the things that happens, is we're not absorbing our food as effectively and efficiently as we could be if we have an inflamed gut lining. And then his copper levels look good. We look at the copper inside the red blood cells, and then copper levels outside the cells. And then his vitamin D, we check 2 different levels of vitamin D, a 25 hydroxy vitamin D, which is kind of the standard one that most physicians will order. And that's perfect. I like the levels to be between 40 and 60. And then this 125 dihydroxy vitamin D, his is a little on the higher side. So that's the more potent form of vitamin D. And generally, we look at that discrepancy in the levels of some inflammation. And so also what we have done here is we held his vitamin D for a little bit because we don't want to push these levels very high. As we will hold it, will help his body, again, start utilizing its vitamin D appropriately. And then we'll go back to supplementing him, since you're, in the winter time where you are, and he's not, because of the way the angle of the sun hitting the earth, his body won't really be absorbing the vitamin D that he needs at this time of the year.
What about, just a quick question about that? For supplementation, we're holding his concentrated vitamin D drops, but I know that there's vitamin D in like the fish oil that we're giving him. Is that different how that's getting absorbed?
No, great question. And we will keep that up because it's a much smaller, not a smaller amount, it's a small amount of vitamin D. And that shouldn't be enough to throw these levels too far off for him. And the omega-3 fats right now for him are so important for his cell walls, because we want to make sure. So if we think about everything on the cellular level. So we want all of the cell walls of the cells along his GI tract, all the cells of his skin. We need those good, healthy fats because we want nice fluid cell walls. We want them mobile. We want nutrients to be able to go in and out. And that's actually part of having a good, healthy cell wall, is going to be part of his body able to utilize the vitamin D more efficiently and to bind to the receptor sites, as will the zinc. So his zinc being low that's pretty classic for eczema and for gut inflammation. So in leaky gut, and his is pretty low. So you were doing some zinc previously, because I think you had read about that. And so this just gives us a little, it gives us a gauge. We know we're going to replace it. We're going to check his levels. And because zinc is something you don't want to necessarily do over long periods of time unless you're checking levels, because zinc and copper go hand in hand. So we don't, in general, we don't necessarily want to replace a single mineral like zinc over a long period of time unless we're looking at levels. That will be a big help for his gut and his skin to get those levels normal. And some of the things that we do use in order to help the body utilize vitamin D are zinc, vitamin B6, and magnesium. So, and you all eat really well. So that's also a big help, because you eat things like green leafy vegetables and pumpkin seeds, and that's where you get magnesium. And then, we're replacing the zinc, and then, B6 that you're going to get from a lot of the foods that you're eating as well. And then ceruloplasmin is a protein that binds copper, and his level was perfect. And then ferritin is a more sensitive indicator of our liver stores of iron, and his was 23. We like that to be closer to 50, like 40-ish, 50. And that should also, as we're getting his body's metabolism a little bit more corrected, and we will most likely use some iron with him. So we should be able to bring those levels up, and we'll keep an eye on those with our lab work. So that is the overview. Any other questions about it?
No, I mean, I think that covers everything and definitely gives us a good starting point, on where we need to go from here. So yeah, I appreciate you going through all of that again with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you all are doing a rock star job of giving him all the supplements and all the things. I know it's not easy to do all the stuff.
As you can see, he's really doing amazing. We just started this liposomal vitamin C, which we have been using for Ryder as well, and it's by Phoenix Aurelius. We're just starting that for Rocky. This is a natural histamine reducer, and when we checked the lab, Rocky was really low on zinc, so we started this zinc by Mary Ruth's Organics. Rocky has continually been getting the probiotics and digestive enzymes with every meal, and these are actually, we get them directly just from Dr. Sheila's office. And then he also gets phospholipids and fish caps, and there's actually other supplements, but these are the ones I'm doing right now. And then also, as far as just the topical goes, what we've been doing for his skin, because of that whole two-way street with the staph on his skin perpetuating the inflammation on the inside of his body. So we've been doing this topical, this is the Aron Regimen, and basically what it is a highly diluted steroid antibiotic cream inside of a lotion, which gets put onto his body. When we started, it was 4 times a day. Now we're to about 2 times a day, and hopefully we'll be tapering down to even 1 time a day soon.